Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to take a look at sewing a hem on a circular garment. So a circle skirt, any dress or skirt that is cut where the hemline is not straight across. It's cut on the curve. So this might look intimidating, but honestly, once you go through the process a few times, it becomes second nature. You just want to make sure that you understand the stitching technique and you have an iron on hand, because pressing and steaming that into the proper shape is really the key to success. All right, let's jump on in and take a look at how to do this technique. To illustrate this technique, I'm going to use the Liberty Jane Piccadilly skirt. It is a circle skirt with a yoke and a waistband. The only modification that I've done to this pattern when cutting it out was add a little bit of length to the hem. So I've added about 3/8 of an inch to extend the length of the skirt so that I can fold it under and hem it. The original design is intended to be used on a fabric like a micro suede that doesn't need to be hemmed, so there is that slight modification here. We're at the point where we have the skirt sewn with a side seam, so we can go ahead and just mark and sew our hem along the bottom of this skirt. So to do that, I'm going to take my seam gauge tool, and I have it set at 3/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to use chalk to mark 3/8 all the way around the perimeter of the circle. Then I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to sew a basting stitch along this marked chalk line. Now we have that basted stitch line marked on the skirt, and I'm going to work my way around the edges, simply pressing that up along that stitch line. Now you'll notice as I'm pressing that in, it kind of helps to shrink that up. And if you use a little bit of steam, it will help your fabric to curve inwardly and shrink into that shape. Now that I have that first line pressed, I'm going to carefully fold under the raw edge, and I'm just going to begin pinning around the perimeter of the skirt to pin down that hem. And if you're doing this on an ironing board, you're going to want to be really careful not to pin through the fabric cover on your board. So you might want to just slip under a cutting mat so that you can pin that down. So as I go and work my way around, I am now creating a 1/4 inch hemline. That 3/8 inch extension is what was added to the pattern, and I'm folding that up and turning the edge under. And if you have a hard time doing this at all, you can press this and then pin it. And if you press it with steam, it will help that fold line to lay flat and not have any puckering. Now another technique, if you have a serger machine, you could serge the raw edge of this circle hemline and then do the same thing here, do your basting stitch and fold it up without folding it under the second time. If you're using a standard sewing machine, you're going to want to cover that raw edge. You could also zigzag that edge, but the finish on that might not look as clean as if you turned under the edge. And you'll also want to think about the fabric that you're using. In this case, we have a very lightweight cotton. It's like a shirting fabric, so it's a little bit lighter weight than a quilting cotton, and it will hold this hem nicely and still be able to kind of roll around and not just puff straight out. But if you were using a quilting cotton, you might just want to finish this raw edge with a zigzag and then do your basting technique and fold this up just the one time and stitch it down and then steam it to get all of that raw edge to just lay nicely flat. So here I'm just using that steam and I'm going around the perimeter, ironing out any little puckers in that hemline, letting the steam do its work to just shrink up that shaping. Then we just bring the skirt over to the machine, and I'm going to straight stitch a hem just shy of a 1/4 inch up from my folded hemline. So I'm going to flip this skirt over and do it on the right side so that I can be sure I'm sewing in a straight line, and then I'll just carefully be pulling these pins out from under the bottom as it gets close as we work our way around the circle. So you can see I'm using this internal line right here, right along that inside of the feed dog as my guide, and I'm trying to keep my hemline as consistently spaced as possible. So it's just about 1/8 of an inch, a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch up from that fold line. So now you can see we have that hem stitched all the way around, and you can see that basting stitch is right there on the fold line. So we're just going to go back and we're going to remove that basting stitch carefully with a seam ripper. You can pull it out in a few spaces, and then it will just pull out all the way. This actually is very similar to if you're going to gather, and if you just pull it all the way, it actually will pull all the way out. So there, I was able to just pull that out the same as I would if I was gathering, but I just pull it too far and then it pulls all the way out. Now we're going to take this and then just carefully steam it to really just remove any of the remaining puckering that's in that hemline edge. There, and then you can see we have a nice little hem. It rolls back over itself as the garment is going to be worn. And then on the inside, you can see we have that edge turned under nicely, and it's caught on the inside of that hem. Now for illustration purposes, I have done this before sewing this center back seam, but if you sewed the center back seam at the bottom first, it will give you a cleaner hemline all the way around the finish. So you would have just sewn this together and then pressed that seam across the center back seam the same as you did on the side seams. If you'd like an additional resource for working with this type of techniques and other basic sewing techniques, this right here is a copy of my sewing book that I originally did for DK Publishing through the Idiot's Guide brand, and then it's been republished in the UK in this bookazine format. It's called Sewing for Beginners. So the same content is inside here, and you can see here we have an illustration of sewing a circular hem on a garment for a person. So the measurements could be a little bit different than doll clothes, but there are a lot of variety of techniques in here, all pictures step by step. It's a great resource, and it is available. You can find this online, either the Idiot's Guide sewing book or this Sewing for Beginners that's done through Future Publishing. All right, well, that's it. I think after you practice this a few times, you will have the confidence and the ability to master this technique and sew any type of garment with a circular hem.